Radio Free Santa Clarita presents The Talk of Santa Clarita, a podcast about issues involving Santa Clarita and the surrounding valley. With your host, Stephen Daniels. Episode 163, founder of the Sedition Caucus PAC, Joe Jacobson. And now, let's see what the Talk of Santa Clarita is.
And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this today. I appreciate you coming out, and nice weather today. Nice weather. The last podcast we tried to do, it was windy as hell, and if we can just avoid the sounds of the lawnmower, I think we'll do okay today. So my first question to you is, very simply, who are you and why are you here?
That's a good question. It is a beautiful day. I feel like I'm going to get a suntan on the back of my head here. Name's Joe Jacobson, founder of the Sedition Caucus PAC. I was born and raised in Seattle. Mm-hmm. As far as why we're doing the work we're doing right now, everybody's upset about the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. People think they need to be held accountable, but unless folks like Mike Garcia here in California aren't held accountable, they'll probably do it again.
So you're after Mike Garcia is what you're telling me.
He is seditionist number one. We think he's somebody who needs to get out because, if he wins in 2022, he'll probably do it again.
Okay, so you're one of those crazy liberals, I guess we'd call you. I was looking at your...
It might be redundant.
Crazy and liberal?
It could be
Did
redundant,
you know if you look into the dictionary under redundant, it actually says redundant, see redundant?
Say that one more time?
If you look into the dictionary under redundant, it says see redundant.
Good, yep, good, got it.
What do you say when someone says that to you, that you're a crazy liberal?
Nobody's really ever said that to me.
Oh, until today.
It's coming from the family, so it is what it is. If somebody were to say that to me, I think it's just the media, the right-wing media, typically likes to distort kind of how people's views are and make people the boogeyman, boogeywoman. I think we agree on more than we disagree on, but at the same time, if they're going to call me a crazy liberal, then let's just do what we're going to do.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because, you're on a mission right now, basically to take care of Mike Garcia, getting him out of office. The problem you have is so many of the Mike Garcia supporters are Trumpers,
right? And
they don't believe anything except what they want to believe. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think there's a danger there in any situation with, I think the Bernie people I have the same issue with. I think they have a blind faith in him that's uncomfortable. And, but at the same time, we've got a lawnmower behind us, so I apologize for the sound right now, guys. And it seems like no matter how many good points you might have, what is it Trump said about, I could go shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue,
Right.
There's some truth to that at this point. And I think his followers that support Mike Garcia have that same attitude. They don't care what anybody says except what their personal media that they trust says. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it's a lie or not.
Right.
So how do you convince somebody, to listen to you when they dismiss you immediately as a crazy liberal?
Yeah, I think there's a segment of the population. I think there's most of the population that votes has already decided who they're going to vote for. Mm-hmm. So you can't win over every voter. People who think the election was rigged and QAnon is the Lord and Savior of America. You're not going to win those people's votes. We're not trying to win Marjorie Taylor Greene's votes. What we're trying to do is Biden won this district by 10 points, and Garcia won by 300 votes. So we really think there's a large segment of the population that's persuadable to vote for a Democrat. Look how Katie Hill did in 2018.
Yeah. That's true. Katie, but I think she also ran a really, really good campaign. I think Steve Knight had kind of, this is just my opinion, but it just seemed like he had given up a lot. He just was hitting toward his base, and Katie really worked it. She really worked it hard. Now, you've done a lot. I read your bio. You work for the AFL-CIO, Barbara Boxer, Mayor Garcetti, among others. who's that? Ron
Wyden, he's got a tough job on the finance committee right now, but he's a good guy, good basketball player.
Good basketball player. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that how you bond with the senators?
I mean, we're both tall. Tall people are, it's just we see eye to eye. Let's just put it that way.
Literally.
I'm here all week, everybody.
Tell me about what you did for for Barbara Boxer and Garcetti and the AFL-CIO. What were your roles in those jobs?
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, I don't look it, but I'm only 26. So, those opportunities are actually in college. Like I mentioned, I went to UCLA. I interned for Senator Boxer, Senator Wyden. One was a constituent side, so, listen to what constituents call in about. A lot of constituents aren't happy with what's going on. That was 2014, so a lot of Snowden issues, a lot of climate issues. For Wyden, he's chair of the Finance Committee. He was the ranking member at the time. A lot of domestic policy research on my end. For the AFL-CIO, I really transitioned over to the political side. We've been talking a lot about these policy issues, whether it's health care or racial justice for hundreds of years, decades. But you need to get the political capital to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's really why I transitioned over to the AFL-CIO as a field organizer in suburban Philadelphia, and then of course SEIU in here right now. Because I think if we want to get some of this stuff done, then we got to have the person power to do it. You can't do much if you don't have a majority in the Senate, to say the least.
Okay, so and now you're head of what is the name of the actual PAC?
Sedition Caucus PAC. The logic behind it is that's the term the media uses. But number two, if I am Mike Garcia and all these other folks, the last thing I want to do is be labeled a seditionist. They're already trying to rewrite the narrative in their districts. Look at what happened at CPAC. They're basically saying this didn't happen. Don't worry about it. Like liberals are making it up, fake news. But we all saw what happened at the Capitol.
I actually posted on Facebook that I considered his vote sign of being a traitor.
I agree.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
And
you'd be right about that.
Garcia and I tried to strike up a friendship after he did the podcast a year and a half ago, and he texted me. He saw it, and boy was he pissed.
Good.
And he really took that personal, and as far as being called a traitor. I mean, he didn't see it that way. I mean, his argument was that there were questions about the legality of the way the votes were taken, or the way the votes were handled in I think it was Arizona, or is it Arkansas? One of the two.
All incorrect on his part.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me what he was incorrect about. Because I've read about this. Their argument was that that the legislature in each state has to be the ones to change the voter rules and the voting laws. And in those cases, in Pennsylvania, and I think it was Arizona, they changed the rules as far as voting goes due to COVID, and that wasn't legal because of the legislature did not officially authorize it. Now, what is your response to that? That's his argument, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what the courts are saying, that's just BS.
Okay.
The courts have just ruled pretty clearly on this. It's not just one court case; it's dozens of court cases about this issue. So I mean, it's if I were them, the last person I'd want to put up on the stand is Rudy Giuliani with my hair dripping, or lack of hair dripping.
Well, let's not make fun of his personal appearance. The guy,
Oh, I mean, the guy's a gremlin. I think. I mean, what do you mean? Like, if you're going to be, that's given my hairline, I think I can make fun of him. In any case, he's just out there spewing nonsense, and the court saw that. Even Trump appointees to the court saw this. So Trump's DHS, Department of Homeland Security, saw this too. They said this was the most secure and fair election that we've had. It's not like Trump DHS is particularly liberal, given some of the stuff they've done in the past. So I think Mike Garcia is somebody who... I'm not sure if he's in the Breitbart, Newsmax bubble, and he, just doesn't know better, or he knows better and is doing it for political incentives. I think regardless, we have to hold him accountable.
I think he, I know his brother and his sister-in-law are both big QAnon fans. So I can't prove it in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And actually, when I asked him in a podcast, he denied it or knowledge of it.
Interesting.
But he seems to follow along the QAnon philosophies, and I'm surprised that he would actually say he didn't know anything about QAnon at the time, considering his brother was so livid about it and on Facebook and stuff. So, tell me what is the ultimate goal of the PAC that you've got here? I mean, is it literally just to get rid of these Republicans that voted for sedition?
Yeah, I mean, we just think it has to be electoral consequences. If I were Mike Garcia or one of these other Republicans, and let's say I either had a close margin of victory or I lost. If I lost, and it was because of maybe my vote on COVID, you know, backlash to the COVID bill, you know, $1,400 checks voting against, schools reopening safely, you know, money for local and state governments so we can fix our roads and bridges. If I knew I lost because of that, you know, I wouldn't change my behavior on sedition if another attempt happened. I would just maybe change my, you know, votes and on the future or what I'm running on when it comes to COVID and the pandemic. We have to make sure there is a specific consequence for the vote to overturn the election, enabling an attack on the Capitol, and the language around fraud. If there's not that incentive, they'll just do it again. So that's the point, is to defeat them and really set that precedent that if you're going to, you know, try to destroy our democracy, you're going to get voted out of office.
How many Republicans are you targeting right now?
To start, we have 5. Excited to be on this podcast because Mike is number 1. You know, I'm pretty sure that might be taken out of context. Mike is not number 1. But you know, that's probably the only, you know, if you take that out of context, that's probably the only good thing I'll ever say about him.
Okay. Well, can you name some of the other ones, the 4 that you're going after right now? Or? Sure,
yeah. We have Mike McCall in Texas. We have Scott Perry in Pennsylvania, Richard Hudson in North Carolina, as well as Beth Van Dyne in Texas as well.
What about people like Devin Nunes and Kevin McCarthy and Louis Gohmert?
I saw you cringe when he said his name a little bit.
No, Louis Gohmert, I think, is just an embarrassment for Republicans and Democrats. I mean, just anybody in Congress. I mean, he strikes me as so unbelievably stupid. It's an embarrassment to see him speak sometimes. And I'm not pulling punches, obviously, on my feelings about that. But it's not. If I was a Republican, I would be embarrassed when Louis Gohmert got up there and spoke, because it's just like he's so obvious that he does not know what he's talking about anything. So
yeah, I guess the problem is it's probably not obvious to a lot of people. So you know, that's now as far as like Nunes, you know, I'd love to, you know, get him out of office, but we just think the electoral math there, you know, he was able to counter a wave in 2018. You know, a lot of fundraising. Really, what we try to do, I mean, you know, I'm one-person team here, got a few people helping me out on a part-time basis. We have to really be, you know, efficient with our resources, and you know, we don't think targeting folks like Ken McCarthy, who are, I mean, you know, realistically, he's probably going to win. He's going to win by big margins, especially during a wave year of 2022. So we're really trying to focus on districts that are vulnerable, but also overlooked. Like some of the districts we're spending in, you know, we're barely spent on in 2020 and 2018, despite the Democrat, you know, overperforming based on the national environment. My background, I work for President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors, and a lot of my work is in statistical research. So with a limited budget, we try to be efficient with our and good stewards of the resources.
Where is your funding coming from? Where did it all come from that you to set this all up? Is it?
Yeah. So you know, at last cycle, I should say, I actually quit my job with SCIU to fund our tangential organization, the Progress Action Fund, and that was exclusively focused on Georgia. I worked at the AFL-CIO and did a lot of work in 2018 to support Stacey Abrams, and she was just yelling from the rooftops, "Come invest in Georgia." But at the time, you know, when I founded the organization, we were being outspent about 5 to 1, 4.5 to 1 in the John Ossoff race. And you know, he's a guy who clearly is electable. A lot of Democrats didn't think he was electable because he was, you know, too liberal for Georgia. Clearly that wasn't the case. So you know, I quit my job in August and we focused on Georgia. We have some rollover for money from that. You know, reaching out to folks who can cut a sizable check, but also you know, small dollar program. We think it's important to build that up as well.
Okay, so tell me about Georgia. Was it? I mean, did you think that you had a chance, or were you just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best? I mean, about getting involved with Georgia. I mean, to me, the whole fate of the country right now is based on what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it without any doubt, that's why it swung toward Biden, and why Ossoff and Warnock won. It's because of Stacey Abrams' voter recruit stuff. I mean, literally, Republicans are saying we have to stop Stacey Abrams. You know. I mean, tell me a little bit about getting involved with it. Was it a kind of a Hail Mary kind of situation, or did you always feel confident that if you could get the message out there that these guys would win? Yeah,
we were just trying to do our part. I mean, you know, 99% of the credit goes to Stacey Abrams and the organization, and you know, the candidates, because you know, they raised the most money, they spent the most money. You know, they're the ones saying invest in us because it was her and the candidates.
Yeah.
You know, we just tried to do our part. In 2018, Democrat groups really didn't invest enough in Georgia. It was kind of overlooked.
Well, they never do, you know.
Well, it was like Ohio. Like, we spent a bunch of money on the Ohio's governor's race in 2018, and that didn't go too well. So, you know, I mean, if you look, really what we try to do is be efficient. You we knew that there was a whole bunch of money in North Carolina, there's a whole bunch of money in Iowa, there's a whole bunch of money in Maine, and we're like, okay, these are probably coin flips, maybe a little bit Democratic leaning based on what 538 was saying, but I would say coin flips. If you just flip the coin on all these, it's still going to be decided down to Georgia. And we knew that even if we, swept the board, chances are we actually need to pass legislation to win again.
Yeah.
The goal is to improve people's lives, not to just win a majority. And you can't do that if you don't have, a 1 or 2 vote buffer. I mean, look what's happening now in Congress.
Yeah.
We're having to water down legislation.
Joe Manchin, most powerful man in Congress now.
I mean, he's got a tough job. Like, Trump won that state by, 20, 30, just huge numbers. So he's in a tough position. But we think if we had a bigger majority, then he could theoretically vote against it.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have to kind of strike the deals that we're having to strike. As far as our targeting went, we knew that instead of being a drop in the bucket in North Carolina, let's be a still small but bigger share of the portion in Georgia. And we just think it's important to reach out to underserved communities, in particular black communities.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations out there think that black voters are it's not worth targeting because they're less likely to vote, but that's really a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're not reaching out to folks,
right,
then of course they're not going to vote. And we've been breaking our promises to a lot of communities for a long time.
Do you think Georgia has become a blue state now, or is that more of a fluke?
It's definitely not a blue state, but it's also not a fluke. Stacey Abrams has been shouting from the rooftops about this for a decade.
Yeah.
So that was the hard work and the intensity that was needed to get the job done. But if you look at the national environment, it's about 4.5 points that Democrats won nationally, and won Georgia by a few thousand, tens of thousands of votes. So if the environment is less favorable nationally than 4.5 points, maybe it's tied in 2022, then I don't see us taking Georgia, for the governorship, unless we just have, replicate our success from 2018 or 2020.
Did you see this as a successful year for Democrats considering Biden won, but because you could break it down as that the Senate, we barely have control of the Senate, and the House actually lost Democratic seats in this last election. So that's a mixed message to me as far as what the people want. You know what I mean? It's like they don't like Trump clearly.
Yeah.
Well, half the population doesn't, and but they also have a problem with too many Democrats in charge of the House or the Senate. And was it a big win for the Democrats, or do you see us more still trying to gain ground?
We definitely got to gain ground. The game is also rigged to a certain degree. It's just based on gerrymandering, for example, not fair districting. In the electoral college is not the most democratic of institutions. Given Californians. If you're a Republican here in California, your vote matters a lot less than somebody in Wyoming, for example.
Yeah.
So there are structural challenges to overcome if you're a Democrat or somebody who wants to pass policies like $1,400 checks, which Mike Garcia obviously doesn't support again.
Yeah.
I think we won by 4.5 points. A victory is a victory. Could we do better? Absolutely. And I think the way we do better is really by starting right now. A lot of Democrats wait until next year, but I'm a big basketball fan. We can't just play the second half. We have to play the first half too.
Yeah. Okay. Talking basketball. I'm from Kentucky, so but there was a reason I left. I hate basketball.
I actually moved to downtown LA so I could be closer to Staples Center.
Oh, really?
and watch some games, but clearly that didn't work out too well.
Maybe that's what jinxed it. I don't know.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Let's talk a little bit about Mike Garcia as a candidate. Well, actually, first let me say this: for the people that are glad that Mike Garcia voted against the $1,400 checks, you obviously don't want a $1,400 check. So when you get yours in the mail, forward it to me, Talk of Santa Clarita. I'll take care of it for you, because I have no problem with socialism.
Pay the leaf blower to move somewhere else.
Yes. Well, I think we're okay. But let's talk about Mike himself.
Sure.
And we talk. Why does he need to go? Are you talking about just all of his votes?
How long is this podcast?
We can go for as long as the batteries last. So no, what is it? Are you talking about? Obviously the insurrection stuff is one thing, but are you looking at that as the main thing to reason to get rid of him, or are you looking at it as a whole as his voting record goes? Because his votes are just typical Republican partisan lines, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except for the insurrection vote.
Well, I guess on typical Republican votes, like it's typical because the Overton window has been shifted so far. Like Ronald Reagan, they'd call him a commie right now.
Yeah.
So I really don't think, it's if the baseline is Ronald Reagan, then these people are just batshit. But if the baseline is George W. Bush at the time was considered very conservative. So but now he's he and Mitt Romney are more moderate because you have Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're just pushing the Overton window.
Yeah.
So where now they seem more moderate. But again even Mitt Romney and George W. Bush, they would be very far to the right of Ronald Reagan, who is the deity of the conservative movement. He's got to go for all of the above. The overturning the election results was really the big thing for us.
Yeah.
Again, it's the incentive. If I were him and I had no principles like he does, I would be like, okay, I won in 2022, great. I'm just gonna, amp it up and be even more, QAnon supportive and trying to, undermine our democracy to, bow down to Trump. But in all honesty, we think voters care about a lot more than that, and probably things more than that. If I'm a voter right now, I'm caring about, COVID, I'm caring about getting the vaccination, I'm caring about getting my family vaccinated.
Yeah.
I want to see people, I want to see my grandparents. I want to be able to, have my kids be able to go to school. I also want to put food on the table. If you're looking at folks, and before the pandemic, a plurality couldn't even, afford a $500 emergency expense. So, these stimulus checks are really going to be important. We're going to hold him accountable for all of the above. Chances are he's going to vote against the Biden infrastructure / climate bill.
Yeah.
People want their roads and bridges fixed. People, want to have jobs created in their district. We're going to hold him accountable if he votes against that. I'm optimistic that we'll have the votes for it. And if he ends up voting for it, great. If he doesn't, then, he's voting against district priorities.
Yeah. I still wonder, going back to that $1,400 check, how anybody can get excited about the fact that he voted for you not to get a check for $1,400. How do you get excited about, yay, he's going to make sure I don't get any money? That's...
Well, it's probably racial politics in all honesty. There's the takers, and there's the welfare queens, and that's the typical Republican talking point. They're thinking people are taking, from our society, from the hardworking people. I know on your podcast with him last time, he talked about, bootstraps. I think he's just not familiar with the data. He thinks that, anybody who is on, social safety net programs, are just moochers. But if you look at the percentages, most people are, from communities that, didn't have bootstraps to begin with, or people falling on hard times.
When it was funny when what I said to him was, for our audience that hasn't seen the podcast, I was trying to understand his beliefs on the social safety net, and I made a remark about some people just don't have bootstraps to pull themselves up with.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's exactly the case. Well, what I didn't call him out on that point was, who said that, where I got that quote from, was Barack Obama. Barack Obama said it at, when he was first taking the nomination for in 2008.
Yeah.
What do you consider the attack on the Capitol partially his fault, or?
Definitely.
How so?
If you're promoting conspiracy theories, these people believe the conspiracy theories. So he enabled the attack. We think actions speak louder than words. He's been going back trying to, undermine our democracy since his own, special election, even when he won. Just from a very macro level, I would have more, I would kind of get it if I had no principles to undermine an election I lost. But he's undermining elections he won. So the man is just he's just, like I said earlier, he's just batshit.
It is rather ironic that he would scream about the election being rigged or whatever for the Democrats when he won the election, and also he was kind of called out for ballot harvesting when his own party is suing the governor to say ballot harvesting is illegal, but he even said, yeah, we're doing it, so what? There's some hypocrisy there for sure.
Republican hypocrisy isn't anything new. It's it's sunny in Southern California. It is what it is.
Not if Trump says it's green. And the sky's green.
Yeah, that's. Your Fifth Avenue comment was on point. I think Democrats and the media for a long time have been waiting for, this story will break him. Yeah. But we didn't target Trump in 2020 because, one was a resource. $1 billion spent. A whole bunch of money. We didn't have the resource to do that. But we also knew when Trump said, this is paraphrasing, but I'm a snake. You knew that when you got me. Mm-hmm. So, this is already baked into the cake. But for a lot of these down ballot Republicans like Mike Garcia and David Perdue, it's not they don't have this cult following.
Yeah.
They're not reality TV stars. They probably couldn't get booked even if they wanted to. But, these are people who don't have people really don't pay attention to very much. So our goal is to expose the light on them. They're a bacteria, and bacteria get.
I could tell you're a big fan of Republicans.
My dad actually voted for John McCain back in 2000. Yeah. So during the primary, he was. I'd prefer to have a Republican Party of the, some Republicans in the 1960s. At least they voted for the Civil Rights Act. Everybody, Ted Cruz talks about how great MLK is, but if they were back in the 60s, they probably would have been the same as George Wallace type folks.
Have you always been a Democrat?
Sometimes, yeah, I'd say for the most part. I've definitely never been a Republican. Sometimes I'd say I'm left of center.
Left of center. So that's way left.
I'd say Elizabeth Warren is mostly my crew.
Yeah.
I like Senator Sanders. I think those are the goals we need to have happen.
Yeah.
I'd say just personally, it's about Mike Garcia. That's why we're found the PAC. Well, on a personal level, I think, if it's like a healthcare.
Well, I'm just trying to get a perspective on you as a person. I mean, to be doing this, do you are there any Republicans that you know? Are you friends with any Republicans? Do you get along with Republicans when you talk to them, or are you just like, yeah, and they can't talk to them?
Yeah, I have friends who are Republicans. I would say that the political conversations aren't as long as they used to be. But I have a good friend from Colorado, and we both love Kevin Hart. So that's kind of how I think it's really important to build. But is he ever going to vote for a Democrat? Hell no.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about being targeted. There's a segment of the population who's always going to vote Democrat and always going to vote Republican. Mm-hmm. There's some people who might flip, but more importantly, there's a huge segment out there who you have to persuade to vote.
Yeah.
That's what Stacey Abrams has been doing. That's really, I think, the biggest segment. If you've been let down by government for a long time, your votes you feel they don't amount to change, then you might become cynical. And I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
I think the cynical people are the ones that became Trump supporters because they felt like government wasn't doing anything for them in the first place, that it was a swamp, as they say,
Yeah, it's just interesting. There's a lot of talk about, people, if you look at the demographics of the Capitol attack, it wasn't even, the white working class, which the New York Times and everybody likes to, say was decisive for Trump's victory. Mm-hmm. People were flying there on their private jets. So it's just very, Trump's support of, or I'd say his electorate of white supremacy is just very, income is not a factor in that, let's just put it that way.
They just apparently have the loudest voices.
Exactly.
But the argument that I think Mike's supporters would say is, how did he support or create the insurrection when he hadn't even voted? His vote to challenge the electoral college in those two states didn't happen until after the insurrection happened. To me, it's shocking that after the insurrection took place that he could still vote like that.
Totally.
But he didn't vote until after the insurrection. So, and he said he was appalled by it. But you're attributing a lot of it to it being his fault?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, it's not just one person. Everybody who bears responsibility.
Right.
If you're promoting conspiracy theories that DHS is literally saying are conspiracy theories, then the people who attack the Capitol are being, for example, like David Duke says he's inspired by Donald Trump.
Right.
If you're inspiring David Duke, you should really look in the mirror because that's not a good look for you.
Yeah. My father, big Trump supporter. I even said, brought up David Duke and a couple of other supremacists that support Trump, and I said, do you think you want them on your team? Doesn't that kind of tell you maybe you're on the wrong side of history?
Yeah, it's not a good look. I think if you're absolutely right. The actions after the election, definitely abhorrent, given he's somebody who is just has no remorse. I think actions really do speak louder than words, at least from my perspective. I've had people tell me, if they apologized and changed their actions, afterwards, does that make it okay? Mm-hmm. No, you still have to hold people accountable. He voted to, let Marjorie Taylor Greene off the hook. He let to vote Trump off the hook, and he's been doubling down on his vote ever since. But at the same time, they're trying to make people forget. If you look at what happened at CPAC, it's like it never happened, and Trump was standing up, against this. Trump was, we have reporting that suggests he was, at the White House, enjoying it when it did happen. So,
it's pretty sick when you think about it.
They're trying to rewrite the narrative, and that's really what we're about. I get it. Voters. There's not to diss on C-SPAN, but there's a reason why C-SPAN doesn't have too many voters. It's or too many listeners. It's because politics isn't the most interesting of subjects. So our goal is to really make sure that rather than the day-to-day political stuff, let's make sure that we're holding Garcia accountable consistently for the next 20 months on healthcare, COVID, the economy. Let's make it interesting for folks. Otherwise, a 2010 might wave could happen again.
Okay. You said in your email to me that the attack on the Capitol was possible to predict it. That it was obvious that it was coming. Is that correct? I mean, was that something that we could have foreseen, as far as the attack on the insurrection itself? I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you look at what's going on at Congress right now, they're having briefings and hearings with Director Wray. There was an intelligence failure. There was, if you're able to, the Patriot Act is a huge kind of, apparatus. So it's shocking that they weren't able to, it's just, I think there's really a lack of, kind of taking these issues seriously when it comes to, overall white supremacy and terrorism. How on earth we didn't plan for this more after Gretchen Whitmer was almost, abducted by these people. Militia groups are active. They are on the rise.
Yeah.
Southern Poverty Law Center has been, waving the red flag, saying, "Oh my God, everybody, look at what's going on." But the problem is white supremacy is so, kind of intertwined with our society that, imagine if these people were, Latino or black. It's interesting. Black folks have been subject to much historical injustices than white folks, but they've never stormed the Capitol. Look at what happened with the current attack. It's a bunch of white people who feel, rich white folks who feel disenfranchised, and I just really think it's a matter of holding them accountable.
Well, let me ask you a question that Facebook is the devil, and I have a tendency to get involved with the devil a couple of times on just arguments back and forth on different political conversations, and a lot of the conservatives would argue that what Mike Garcia did as far as challenging the electoral college is no different than what Maxine Waters did in 2004, I believe it was, and also in 2000 regarding George W. Bush's election, and challenging the votes in the electoral college at those times. Are they the same or are they different? And if they're the same, why isn't she considered a seditionist?
Yeah, I don't think they're the same. I think they weren't inciting an attack on the Capitol. I think if you look at the actions that led up to it, it'd be different if they were the supporters weren't taking these words to be acts of violence, for example. If they didn't promote this, I just really think all the actions that led up to it. Trump is the first president to really do this. Even Clinton and Obama. When Trump won, they didn't, do what Trump is doing. So I think, this type of, it's a cult of personality, and whatever Trump says goes. And it's just the promotion of the violence, and kind of leading those steps leading up to it. If I were in their shoes, I think Mitt Romney's a good example. He was saying that the election was fair. The election wasn't rigged. He was calling it out. I don't agree with Mitt Romney on pretty much anything, but if you're willing to kind of turn your back on right-wing extremism, I think that's a model people should go off
But
of.
I'll tell you this: I'm not a big fan of Mitt Romney's policies either, but he has proven to be a real American, putting the Constitution above his party on several issues. Certainly have a lot more respect for him now than I did when he was running for president. And also I was going to say that the big difference in 2000 and 2004 is that in both those cases, the people that were contesting the election were based on the idea that not every vote had been counted. What Garcia and his group of people were voting to do was trying to suppress votes. Big difference, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You also at the time, you don't have people like Josh Hawley in 2000 or 2004, showing signs of solidarity, waving their fist in the air to encourage the insurrectionists. So I just think...
well, there's pictures of Mike Garcia talking to the insurrectionist crowd a day before the event even took place and stuff. So,
not a good look for him, to say the least.
Let's talk a little bit about just Trump's influence on the GOP.
Sure.
Has the party become just Trumplicans? I guess would be the term now. Is the GOP dead as it was, and now it's just Trump's party?
Yeah, they kind of fostered an environment that created him. So I think it's been, a party that it's been Trump's party for longer than he's been president. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But as of now, it's just a cult of personality. Whatever he does is basically the grace of God, and that's clearly not the case.
Do you think if he he's not a healthy guy.
No, he's not. Ronnie Jackson, for many reasons, was not the best physician.
Well, what do you think would happen if, say, Trump passed away or died, or just disappeared off the face of the planet? Would like the Hydra with a new head pop up, or Donald Trump Jr. pop up, or would it?
I just watched Captain America yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. It's eerily sad. You got Donald Trump Jr., you got Ron DeSantis. They just know that if they want Trump's blessing. He's the Don Father, and our job is really to make sure that people look at because when you look at his policies, voters don't support that. It's just a matter of Trump, attacking the libs, and we think if we can make sure that the conversation is focused on the issues and put Mike Garcia type folks on the defense, then that's going to be effective. But you're absolutely right. I really do think it's a party of him. They don't care what he does. A lot of Republican voters didn't want to have people, insurers discriminate against folks with pre-existing conditions. But because Trump said it was okay, spun the narrative, they went for it.
Yeah.
Anything he does, healthcare, taxes, you name it, it's his game, and it goes with him.
Is Mike Garcia qualified to be in Congress, do you think?
I guess we have to define the term qualified. I personally don't think he should be our congressman.
But he was a fighter pilot.
Yeah, I don't think that makes you. That's thank him for his service, but yeah. I don't think that's if everybody who was a fighter pilot. I just don't think that's the only thing that people should look at.
Yeah. But the reason I even kind of joke about it just because, and actually, for the record, people, Mike Garcia and I had coffee, and we joked about the fact that he keeps saying that he's a fighter pilot. And
he's not Tom Cruise. Let's just put it that way.
It's not Tom Cruise.
This is not Top Gun. This is not. I think that's a big thing. People think TV is reality, and more people pay attention to TV than to politics.
Yeah.
So Mike Garcia, he's not Tom Cruise. This isn't Top Gun. This is real life, and Mike Garcia is just off the deep end.
And just so the side note, Tom Cruise is Maverick. Probably not a great congressman. So, when you look at his ads, there were a lot of slamming his opponent, Christy Smith, and saying that he was a fighter pilot. But there wasn't anything about him and his qualifications for the job. I'm not doubting that he's a competent person that can read legislation and make his decisions and stuff like that. I'm not saying that he's not capable.
Well, I don't think he even reads his own legislation. Yeah. I've worked on the Hill for a little while, and it's staffers, and they tell you how to vote.
Yeah.
But I think the people who tell the staffers and who talk to Garcia, if Garcia ever had a conscience or grew a spine, he might change his vote. The problem is that there's the incentive where if you do that, then you'll end up like Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is by no means a moderate, or she's an extremist just on a different plane, but at least she stands up for democracy.
She's an American before she's a Republican.
Yeah, exactly. She's been, again, if the Overton window has just shifted so far, where now the Cheneys are kind of in the middle.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's he's. I don't know how competent he is. I'm not going to comment on that. But what I will say is that he's not pulling his own strings. It's kind of like Cory Gardner. Cory Gardner's a great example. He was down by a lot. He could have changed his voting record to be more in line with Colorado priorities, but he knew he'd lose all his Mitch McConnell money. So, if Garcia goes against Trump or goes against McCarthy, even if he wanted to, which I don't think is the case, they would just dry up his money. So I don't think, I guess the better term would be empty suit. He's just there for a vote, and he's really not there to be a thought leader or anything like that. Even Paul Ryan, they called him, if Paul Ryan is a thought leader, then, the bar is not particularly high.
What do you do about confronting political extremism, particularly on the campaign trail? It's as I was saying before, if you're a Democrat, no matter even if you're Joe Manchin as a Democrat, people mark you as a crazy left-wing liberal before you can even put your arguments forward as to why. So how do you fight that? How do you argue the case about the issues if they want to dismiss you immediately based on your political beliefs?
I think you got to target the right voters. We're not going to persuade everybody. Some people are just so far gone down the QAnon rabbit hole that you're not going to get to them. And Stacey Abrams' approach is pretty simple. We can persuade some folks, but most importantly, we can also turn out the base and encourage folks who might be disenchanted with politics, who have our values, to come out and vote. I don't think there's a lot of political dialogue about bringing back coal jobs, and I think we can't make false promises to people. I think we have to be real with folks and really kind of send a message that we're going to have your back, but we also have to move forward too. Joe Manchin's in a difficult spot. I think he could be more liberal, but at the same time, he could not be that much more liberal. He barely won in a state that is just Trump overboard.
Yeah.
So
and if he did lose, he would probably lose to a much more extreme Republican candidate. You know what I mean? It's like he may not be the most loyal Democrat, as far as voting on party lines, but he's still better than probably what would emerge if Joe Manchin lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like Kirsten Sinema. I think she's in a tough spot too. Arizona's a difficult district. Like I think she could be a little bit more liberal. I don't think she could be too much more liberal. But I think Mark Kelly is he's a little bit more liberal than she is. So I think there's some room to. I try to cut them some slack, given it's they got to get reelected, especially in 2024, which we don't know how the national environment's going to be. But I think our model is really John Ossoff. People thought he was unelectable, and John Ossoff is much more liberal than anybody else who ran for Senate in 2020. So let's just try to find folks who Do
you think George? Going back to Georgia, do you think that you said John Ossoff was very electable?
Yeah.
Do you think that it was more about John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock as candidates, and Biden as a candidate, or was it more about an anti-Trump, anti-Republican vote? Or which, if you had to choose between which one it was, do you think we had the better candidates, or do you think it was just like somebody was so fed up with the Republican Party and Trump in general that it swung the other way?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. It's pretty much everything's involved. I really think the biggest thing is honestly the turnout. I think it's the organization that Stacey Abrams built. Because if you look at how well we did during the runoffs, they did better than Biden. So I think it's all a combination of things where yes, it's the national environment, it's Trump, but if you don't have that infrastructure, that's 60, 70, 80%. But if you had a candidate like let's just say there were not some good Senate candidates in 2020. So I won't get into that for lack of.
Let's talk about 2022 then.
Yeah.
What do the Democrats need to do to win in 2022? There's already kind of an acknowledgement that the House is probably going to go to the Republicans in 2022 because it usually switches over. To keep that from happening, what do the Democrats need to do?
Yeah, I think Biden's coming in a unique time. I think you're absolutely right historically. The first midterm for the president is always bad. Look what happened to Trump in 2018. Look what happened to Obama. Look what happened to Clinton. But there are other recent examples. Let me rephrase that. There's one recent example, Bush in 2002. You can make the case that this is similar to Bush in 2002. You could also make the case that this is similar to FDR in 1934. Yeah. Is it unlikely? Yeah, if I were going to Vegas and bet a few bucks, literally a few bucks, I'd bet on Republicans taking it. That's just how it is. Yeah. But at the same time, this is a unique opportunity where I think we can, get the pandemic. Biden's doing a good job. I think, Biden has to keep pushing big. He has to, recognize, and I think he's doing it, that voters are going to hold him accountable for getting the pandemic under control and saving lives and reopening the schools and the economy. If he doesn't do that, that's what Republicans want. Republicans aren't, they voted for stimulus checks in the past. Yeah. They voted for, relief for families. But what their strategy now is basically what McConnell did in 2010, which is to obstruct in hopes that that works again. It worked from last time, but Democrats know that instead of watering down legislation, they just need to go out there and deliver for the people. The bills still have to be passed, of course, but I'm optimistic that Pelosi and Biden are going to be like, people want these checks. People want schools reopened. People want money for vaccine distribution. Yeah. If we do that, then we have a real shot.
It's it always struck me as that when they've lost in the midterms, and the Democrats have lost and Republicans have taken over the House or whatever each time. To me, it's always been about I think that there was a referendum on people feeling that they didn't get enough done. Or they didn't see enough results of what they were seeing. Like Obamacare hadn't really fallen into place at the time. Now everybody loves Obamacare. Well, not everybody, but most people really approve of Obamacare.
When you don't call it Obamacare, people love it even more, even Republicans.
You know, that's actually true. I read a story about my home state of Kentucky about they would do a survey saying, what do you think of the Affordable Care Act? And everybody would go, that's great, it's great, it's great. And then they go, well, what do you think about Obamacare? And they go, oh, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. You know, it's the labeling that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think I think Biden's in a weird situation right now, because if he waits too long trying to negotiate with Republicans to get these bipartisan bills sent across the sent through, nothing's going to get done, or it's going to get watered down so much it's not going to matter. And I almost feel like, now's the time to go. Screw it. We've got the majority. Let's put this through and see if the people like it. And I think if people saw the results of that, regardless of whether it's partisan or bipartisan or not, they would see, seeing the results would probably help ensure keeping the House in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think we got to get these results passed, and we got to get them passed fast so that people actually see, the agenda happening. I think Obamacare was more of a long-term fix. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can even call it a fix. Yeah. It's a long-term progression. Mm-hmm. Obama said, Medicare for all would probably be best, but we're not starting with that. No. And people don't want to lose something. So I think, personally, let's get to a place where we can, give everybody access to health care, and everybody, healthcare, you just pay, a few bucks more in taxes, and you're saving, thousands of dollars every year because cost is going to be lower. But at the same time, I want the damn website fixed. Make sure the website works. That's the most important thing. I'll take public option if the website works. Yeah. Not Medicare for all if the website doesn't work. Yeah. So, I think, I'm a realist on that front. Democrats I think we just got to keep fighting. I think, let's not think that, this $600 billion proposal Republicans put forward, no money for local and state governments. How on earth are you going to reopen schools safely with that? How on earth are you going to, keep making sure there are, sufficient benefits for folks? Child care, for example. I used to work in, child care with SEIU, UHW, making sure that healthcare workers who are on the front lines, literally risking their lives to keep everybody safe, how are they supposed to take care of their kids if they don't have child care? Right. So, the state funding just wasn't there for that. We need money from the federal government to actually make that happen. People want those services. Mm-hmm. So, this is, again, the Overton window shifted so far. Mitt Romney is a moderate, but that $600 billion proposal they put forward, it's just laughable. And I'm glad that Biden knew it was laughable, because if you look at the polling, people want money for government services because they want their damn roads and bridges fixed.
I think it's 80% approve of the COVID relief package he's trying to put forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Like polling Republican and Democrat.
Yeah, even polling suggests that a majority of Republicans, support it. At the lowest, it's maybe about 30% of Republicans.
Yeah, that's still quite a bit.
Last time 30% of Republicans supported anything was, I don't know, Lincoln was president.
Here's a joke for you. Do you know what it costs to turn a Trump supporter into a socialist?
I don't.
$1,400.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
it's a cult of personality, and I think it's party above all. It's just tribalism. I did some student government stuff at UCLA, and the same thing was said. At the time, it's party over the people.
But see that that doesn't get anything accomplished, though. Yeah, you know what I mean? I worry about our country in the sense that there's so much partisanship now. That we're unable to get anything done with both sides. There's no handshaking and saying not because of COVID, but also, I mean, in a more metaphorical sense, that there's nobody going, okay, let's make this work together and find a way to come together on getting this through. I mean, I'm sure the Republicans want to do a bill for COVID as well, but they just don't want to pay as much as Biden wants to do. But it just seems but it's not even that. It's I think that there's a danger now because, like Mike said, he was a different kind of Republican when I did this interview. Yeah, and he's proven to be anything but that. No. He's voted party line on everything, and voted in support of Trump's ideas and concepts more than anything else, and not done anything that would even remotely upset his party. And you hear him doing talking points, the Republican convention talking points, the CPAC talking points and stuff like that. And, it's obvious that you can't talk to him about, one thing a lot of people don't know is that he's blocked people on his Twitter account.
Thick skin.
Yeah, that because they don't agree with him.
Yeah.
He's blocked them.
Right.
Well, how do you hear everybody's opinion and represent the district if you're blocking some of the people's opinions that you don't like? If you're not hearing the other side, how do you make a decision that's not that's representative of the district itself?
I mean, he's got thin skin, clearly.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like the Chinese government.
Yeah.
They want to surveil everybody, and they're just the worst, to say the least. And oppress their own people, because they're scared if the truth gets out that the people won't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Garcia is just a lesser degree of that. Trump, they're just also thin-skinned. It's not like power is showing that you can take on the arguments full force. Power isn't, hiding behind, corporations for, their block feature. He's just not, he just thinks if the truth gets out there, if I were him and I had no principles, then, I would be scared of the truth, because this is a district that voted for Biden by 10 points.
Yeah,
Biden is much more popular than him.
That's something I don't get about the insurrection vote, is that when Biden wins this district by 10 points and he wins by 300 votes, when Garcia wins by 300 votes, how you vote against that, the certification of Biden's election, and think that's a good move, just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like a very prominent Republican, whose name I will not speak of, the other day, told me, he says, I don't understand why he keeps making stupid votes, because that's just going to alienate the people out here that are not part of his base, and he needs more than his base to win. And the vote just doesn't seem to make sense unless you're trying to really ensure that Trump.
Right. Trump is the future of the Republican Party. Trump's not going anywhere. So the last thing you want to do is get on his bad side.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Matt Gaetz will come to your district, like in Wyoming. I don't even I'm surprised Matt Gaetz has ever been invited to anybody's birthday party. He's just terrible. He's doubling down. It worked for Trump. Rather than appeal to the moderates, let's just inflame racial tensions. Mm-hmm. Let's make people think they're a bunch of moochers out there, and
right.
They're coming over the border. We don't hear much about the caravan anymore, because it never was a real thing.
Yeah. It's easy to point at the problems coming from somewhere else outside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you point to a certain group or a demographic and say they're the reason that you don't have a job. They're the reason the economy's screwed up.
Right.
They're the reason there's so much crime in this.
Grievance politics.
Grievance politics. Yes.
Yeah. The problem is there's very just historically if anybody should be grieving, it's Latino folks, black folks, communities of color. Mm-hmm. You don't see them storming the Capitol, but these rich white folks who think that these are. They flew in there on their private jets. These are not, even upper middle class. These are, even state legislators too have a few bucks.
Do you have a Mike Lindell MyPillow?
I honestly didn't even know about MyPillow until I saw tweets about. I guess, I think he should probably be focusing more on his business. He probably wants to run for something. It's like David Perdue. David Perdue. A lot of ththese rich corporate CEOs want to run for something. Maybe it's just, I don't know. Nobody ever loved them growing up like Trump. They really just view this, maybe there's a hole inside and they want to run. I would think all that money would make them happy, but clearly not.
Honestly, I don't think Trump thought he was going to win. I think he was just doing it to,
Trump TV. That's what he wanted. Yeah. That's what Kellyanne Conway was
saying
talking about,
he thought it would be a great reality show to run for president, then take that base and turn it into a TV show. And when he actually got elected, he went, oh, crap. I'm stuck.
Yeah, well, he's definitely going to run again in 2024. He's not, down for. It's like Steph Curry at the free throw line. I'd say is Trump running in 2024? Is Steph Curry making his free throw? So he can't. There's just this big hole inside him. I don't want to lose, and I have to win. Not a therapist, but some of the reporting says he just wasn't loved as a child, and therefore he has this big hole to please people, have people like him. So I think most importantly, our work isn't going to be on Trump. I just think as a small organization, we're not going to focus on him. What we're going to focus on is Garcia. Tie him to Trump when it's applicable, because Trump's so unpopular in the district.
Yeah.
But COVID's, we talk about sedition, we talk about other issues, but people want to have their kids go back to school. That's really the most important things to folks. These kitchen table issues. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not really having to choose between the both. Or the two. We can hold him accountable for sedition, while also reminding people that he's not standing up for getting the pandemic under control.
What do you think is? What have you guys done so far to attack on Garcia, and what do you plan on doing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, as a small organization, it's just digital. We think it's much better than TV, since TV you target everybody. But like I've mentioned, not everybody's a persuadable voter. Not everybody can get out to vote. We want to target the voters we think have voted in the past, and we need to get out in 2022, or people who are persuadable. I think it's important for us to use the newest technology. A lot of Democrats are thinking, newspaper readership is back in the 1950s. And,
I agree with that.
It's we just got to be new, and, we got to, again, we're not the big organization, so with a limited budget, we got to do our best to hold him accountable on digital platforms. I think whenever he votes against something, we're going to hold him accountable, because most people are paying attention next year. But again, you don't just play the second half, you play the first half too. So we're really going to try to fill that gap when most organizations aren't spending money this year. Mm-hmm. We're going to be there beating that drum so that voters know that Mike Garcia, because a lot of voters now are just like, okay, I only see ads right before the election. Right. It's a political smear.
Right.
I mean, in all honesty, there are a lot of organizations that smear folks. But that's not what we're about. If you vote against the bill, we're going to hold you accountable for it. And right now, given the market's less saturated, we think we can get a bigger bang for our buck.
Yeah. Well, I think Mike Garcia, one of the reasons he won is because he seemed to focus most of his advertising on streaming platforms like Hulu. God, if I saw that Christy Smith ad one more time saying that she would fire teachers, which was not true, I think I was going to hurl.
Yeah, I mean, it's digital's the future, and you can target the specific voter too. It's not just a broad swath of the population. Like, why on earth would we want to run ads to QAnon supporters? There's no way QAnon supporters are voting for, the next Democratic candidate. They're going to be just bowing down to Trump regardless of what he does.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have, when you say digital, is it Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or where will we see your ads at?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you'll be seeing our ads, because I'm pretty sure that, it's the voters we need to win. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But I will say that, without spilling the secret sauce, probably all of the above. Mm-hmm. We've run a few ads. It's really just where we get the best engagement rates. Where are people liking our ads? Where are people viewing them? If I were a voter in the district, I probably wouldn't target me, because I already know who I'm voting for.
Well, so. I mean, this is a unique district, and in the sense that Cenk Uygur, I always have trouble saying his name. Forgive me, Cenk. But he ran out here on a progressive platform and lost really bad in the primary, and I just lost my whole train of thought.
He did lose pretty badly. His past statements kind of got him in some trouble.
Yeah.
It's not a good look on that front.
Yeah. But I mean, it's but the district. But the thing I remember what I was saying now. Pardon me. I need more Red Bull. But the thing I tried to tell him when he did a podcast with me was that this is the one district that I can think of specifically that it matters if you are from this district, if you grew up here.
Yeah.
Brian Caforio ran in 2016 and 2018 and lost both times. Katie Hill won, but she grew up here. Mike Garcia won, he grew up here. Buck McKeon won, he grew up here. Steve Knight grew up here. Every other candidate or opponent to these winners have all been, what, for lack of a better way to describe it, carpetbaggers. I think some people may even say to you, look, you're not even from our district. What do you know? I mean.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm from here in LA, so for being in LA, I have a good understanding. Mm-hmm. I actually worked on the primary campaign in 2020 on the independent expenditure side with SEIU, so I have some familiar experience in the district.
Yeah. I'm not saying you don't have a point.
In all honesty, though, just to address your other point.
Yeah.
I've crisscrossed the country working on races, and everybody tells you that everywhere you go.
Really?
So, yeah, no, it's everywhere. It's like, I've actually, had conversations with folks in San Diego and Pennsylvania. Everybody tells me everywhere that, this is a really localized district. If you're not from the district, you're not gonna know what's going on. And I think that's true to a certain degree, but if that logic were true across the board, then there would be no, kind of new ideas introduced. And I think, it's like I say, I think it's 50-50. Let's, that's why I'm, here in the district, talking with folks, having conversations, learning from what's going on the ground. But at the same time, if it's groupthink, then I don't think groupthink never works out particularly well, as evidenced by Trump's cult right now.
Well, I mean, do you have like a favorite right now as far as the Democrats go to run against Mike? Is there anybody in particular? I mean, there are a couple of rumors going around about who might run this time. Christy Smith's name has been brought up several times, but there have been some other names as well. And I'm just wondering, do you have a preference yet, or do you want somebody more progressive than, say, Christy was? Or
I know that the FEC laws are lax, but nonetheless, we're on the independent expenditure side, so we can't endorse candidates.
Okay.
Not talk about it. I would basically anybody who's better than Mike Garcia. The bar is particularly low. We're gonna kind of run our ads without talking to these candidates because it's not trying to.
You just want a Democrat in
not trying to end up like Jared Kushner's dad and that whole FEC scandal stuff, corruption and everything.
You just have to be good friends with the president and he'll pardon you.
Yeah, it's but I think we want somebody who's standing up for our values. Whoever that is, I think. This district is Katie Hill won, and Katie Hill, I would argue, was more liberal than most people thought she could be in the district.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think the primary last year taught us that I really think like the policy is important, but I think it's more about it's going to be a referendum on Biden, and I think if we can really tie Mike Garcia to opposing Biden. Biden's doing things that the district supports. Let's just go from there. There's a long way off too. I really do think our job is to make sure it's easier for the candidate, whoever that is, when they run. Drive down Mike Garcia's approval ratings. He's already digging himself a hole, so I think our job's going to be.
Do you know what his approval ratings are right now, or by any chance? Do you know? I mean.
We think it's a little early. We're looking to do some polling, and then upcoming months after the first 100 days. We think the best piece of data, given how awful the polling was in 2020, 50-50.
Yeah.
So I think a big thing for us is going to be turnout. Democrats historically don't do well in midterm.
I hear that quite a bit. The Democrats don't turn out in primaries, but they turn out for the election.
Well, not even primaries. I just meant in midterms. So like 2022, like you mentioned earlier, we're probably not going to do as well. If you were to tell me we would do as well as in 2018, I would laugh. I just think that's not going to happen.
Well, I think that was a referendum on Trump.
Yeah.
Katie ran a really good campaign, but I do think a lot of her help, as far as funding goes, and a lot of volunteers, was because they wanted to flip the district because of Trump. I think she had a lot of help because of who was president at the time. If we had had a Democratic president, if Hillary had been president, I don't know if she would have had the support that she had gotten to win. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So it's kind of, I don't know. But I mean, do you think this district can be flipped back again though, pretty easily, or?
I don't think easily. I think it's going to be a fight, but I think it's a fight worth having. 300 votes is such a small margin, and the national environment was about 4.5 points. Trump won lost by 4.5 points nationally. So the district it's close. Biden won. I think there's definitely an opportunity. It's just a matter of other groups who can legally recruit candidates and kind of work with candidates, those groups doing what they need to do. And then our niche, again, small organization, not a huge budget, doing our, digital work to make sure that whenever Mike Garcia is voting against constituent priorities, we're holding him accountable. And he's off to he's already opposing H.R. 1. He's opposing, justice for George Floyd. He's already opposing the Biden COVID bill. Like, I don't see him, being like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to become Biden's, best friend now. Like, that's not going to happen.
Just for our listeners and watchers, the H.R. 1 is the election bill to more cleaner elections, making it easier to vote and things like that, and voting rights. And then obviously the COVID bill is the $1,400 check, among many other things. And then what was the third one you brought up?
Justice for police reform, just making sure that George Floyd's death doesn't happen again.
Yeah, make sure chokeholds are illegal and everything like that. So he's voted against all three of those.
Not a particularly bipartisan start for him. No. No Republicans voted for that.
Yeah.
So it's just.
My experience with him was when he came on, he did a 2-hour podcast with me, which was very generous of his time. And
that's a lot of time.
Yeah, and it was the air conditioning was blown out in the place, so we were
gosh,
it was so hot, it was unbelievable. But what struck me as interesting about him when I did the interview was, this is a guy who wants to be a congressperson. He's a Republican, but he doesn't necessarily subscribe to the national agenda. He's his own man. And when he became the front runner, and I saw him at a forum, it was like 4 months later, and it was shocking because suddenly it was like the Republican Party had gotten to him, and because all he could do was spout out the Republican talking points, which was not the Mike Garcia I met when I did the podcast with him. You know what I mean? It's sort of like he just jumped on board with the opportunity and stopped questioning. And someone told him, if you want to win, you want to be big with the Republican Party, you need to do this.
He probably wants to run for, I don't know what he could run for, if in the future. I mean, it's California, but I think he wants to probably rise up House leadership like Kevin McCarthy. I bet, or get some lobbying job or whatever. And I think, to make it in the Republican world, you have to be an extremist. Otherwise, you're going to get a primary challenge. Republicans are. He does not want Matt Gaetz coming to his district. It's just, he's scared. He's honestly scared.
The interesting thing is too. It's like if you watch the podcast I did with him, and watch his body language in particular, because I watched it more than once, obviously. But he brings notes. He brings notes, and he refers to them constantly. He won't do anything without the notes.
I should probably do that more.
Yeah, and no, you're doing fine. And when I asked him about the Affordable Care Act, he didn't understand it. He clearly did not have an understanding of healthcare, the healthcare system in the United States, and did not. All he could say was it cost too much. And I tried to press him on specifics on it, and he could not give me specifics. He just kind of, it's like, well, it's bad. And I said, well, what about a public option? I had to explain to him what a public option was. And the only thing that went through my mind was, for somebody who's running for Congress, this is stuff, these are like baby talking points that you should already know. You know what I mean? It's like...
The bar is not high, is it?
No, well, it kind of amazed me. It just seems like these are common sense things that you need to know right up front. And he had no clue. None. No understanding of the social safety net. When I had coffee with him later... a couple of months later, the first impeachment was taking place, and he did not quite understand the implications of the impeachment process or what was happening with it. I had to sit there and go, no, Mike, this is why this is bad. And he's like, really? I didn't think about it like that. And I was like, how can you not do that? How can you?
It's probably in the Fox News bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, Fox News is out here like, PBS or something with content that's, Democrat bad. White supremacist good. That's kind of like it's not. I think if that's your personal interaction with him, it's probably he's just in the bubble. I mean, and he's just down the rabbit hole.
Well, he has admitted to me that he doesn't trust any media at all. I mean, and I'm like, well, where do you get your news? And he says, he didn't have an answer. It's like,
well, it's probably Fox. I mean, he's probably getting. Because that's if you want to get Trump's attention, you have to go on Fox. You have to listen to Fox. You have to figure out what Fox wants. Yeah. So Trump is going. He picks his people. He picked Ron DeSantis, and he's trying to make people believe, whether it's true or not, that he is the kingmaker in the Republican Party.
Right.
I mean, it is. It's just the question of what much of a percentage impact does he make.
Yeah.
I just think he's not. I think there's just not a spotlight on Mike Garcia. Look at it as as an organization with not very many followers on Twitter yet. I can't speak too much on this, but for a congressperson, it's not like he's Dan Crenshaw or something with hundreds of thousands of followers.
Dan Crenshaw just gets attention because he's got an eye patch. It's all.
He's also actually. Dan Crenshaw's content, like that video he made, that was just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But it's TV. It's interesting. Dan Crenshaw at least is able to get his name out there.
Yeah, but you remember him because of the eye patch. It's the guy with the eye patch.
Pete Davidson also it's just
Mm-hmm.
he made. You can't make fun. You can't make fun of. Probably should have steered clear of that. Pete Davidson. But in any case, now I'm going to get. If I get ripped on by Pete Davidson, that would definitely be the best. In all honesty, that's probably one of the best things to happen for Dan Crenshaw. Nobody knew about Dan Crenshaw until Pete Davidson. So he should just send him a bouquet of flowers or something.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the fact that he came on Saturday Night Live afterwards showed he had a sense of humor about it, which was really great. I mean, it just made him more charming. And
it made him seem like a victim.
Yeah.
Of Pete Davidson. Why? Again, but it fills into this narrative. The media's out to get you.
Mm-hmm.
The media is definitely not out to get Mike Garcia because most people probably don't even know who Mike Garcia is. No. So really, our point is to I saw for voters who I saw that ad. let's just kind of build on that brand awareness. It's kind of like Jake from State Farm. I really didn't know who Jake from State Farm was when I first watching those ads, but then I saw it multiple times for the past 10 years, and now, apparently it's Drake from State Farm. So, it's kind of the same thing. Like, Mike Garcia's just brand idea is just so low.
Right.
Like, once people, start realizing who he is, and that's really our job. Let's shine a light on this virus and Mike Garcia, the virus, and, defeat him.
Well, I'd love to have him back on the show again, but
hey, sign me up too. I'll be here.
Okay, I'll bring you in.
I don't think he'll.
Mike has chosen not to do the show.
Really?
surprise! Since the last time he did it, and really the only media he seems to be doing in general, it seems to be the conservative media. Where they're going to give him softball questions and stuff like that.
And he probably doesn't want any. I mean, he's probably thinking about his campaign ads. Like, he probably is just thinking like, well, if this is, the DCCC or whoever could theoretically use this as a cut.
Which they did last time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if I were him, I wouldn't. It's just like he's probably weighing the pros and cons, and he just thinks it's better to, follow Trump and because the Republican Party is Trump. So I just think he wants to do whatever Trump's doing, and if he were to get into a gotcha question by asking him, what do you stand for? He might, sweat a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like he should come on the show because what a lot of people don't know is some people have accused me of like taking the footage and putting it out of context and stuff like that. But I don't edit the footage, and I make my footage available to anybody. The National Republican Convention took stuff for Christy Smith from one of my podcasts. Yeah. And it's not my fault Mike said that he doesn't believe in the social safety net. He said it. If it's not edited and, it was put out there, and so, I don't know. To me, it just strikes me as a little cowardly to not be able to come forward and,
it's also very privileged. Yeah. Like, my dad is a great example. He, when he was like 3 or 4, his dad passed away. And, his mom had, his brother, his mom was responsible for taking care of both of them. If she had to, didn't have Social Security survivor's insurance, then that would have been possible. Like, I think people don't give moms enough credit. Like, it's, breadwinner. Well, the breadwinner wouldn't be able to, quote unquote, do what they do. Single parents have the toughest job.
Right.
It's, for me, it's, I'm only 26. Even having kids is like, oh my gosh, like that'd be an incredible ordeal. That's difficult as hell.
It is
imagine having 2 kids when your spouse dies. And if Mike Garcia doesn't believe in social safety nets, it's just empathy. I think really, why I got involved in politics is, let's have empathy for people.
Yeah.
I've been hurt in the past, and people have hurt me. But I didn't take that as, screw everybody. I think Mike Garcia probably, people are lazy and somebody hurt me, and therefore, nobody deserves empathy.
In his defense, what he actually said about social safety net is that he believes that it's more up to the churches and the charities and the nonprofits in the area to take care of people that are struggling.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah, just to clarify what his beliefs are. It's not that he doesn't believe the poor need help, but he doesn't believe the government should be doing it.
I think he underestimates how many people actually are in bad circumstances.
Or the fact that before the social safety net was created under FDR, that's what people depended on, and we had bread lines and the Great Depression, and it was a much worse situation than it.
We could send him a documentary on the Great Depression. Maybe he'd enjoy that.
If we get him to watch it, he'd probably call it liberal bias.
We could just put Trump narrating it. If Trump narrated that, the Great Depression was very bad.
That's
very
pretty good.
Long lines, so bad.
Huge.
The problem with Trump, just on that point, it's just like he's comically evil. Like, nobody, it's comically evil. So it's brutal.
What's important about this district in particular? Is it because Mike is so vulnerable, or is there something about this district that makes it attractive to your PAC to try and flip?
Yeah, just the close. Katie Hill, she flipped it. 300 votes. Biden won the district. The Democrats spent a lot of money on districts where Trump won handily. And we think that if you're willing to vote for Biden, then you're probably willing to vote against Mike Garcia. The case just has to be made. Democrats got outspent a fair amount here last time, and the best predictor, statistically speaking, is dollars spent in a race. Unless we are able to reform our elections, which even Republicans agree on, to get special interest and big money out of politics, it's going to be the money at the end of the day. How much money do we spend? How much does your opponent spend? What do you spend it on? would love to not have money play a huge influence in politics. That would be ideal. Republicans don't like it that happens on the Democratic side. So,
right.
But Republicans benefit from big money more than Democrats do. So it's probably going to stay that way for a long time. But I really think investing in races where not enough money was spent and investing in races where Biden did well and Republicans ended up winning the congressional seat, I think are good opportunities.
Should Christy Smith have lost, do you think, last time? I mean, was there a bad campaign there, or was it just Mike squeaked by, or on his base, or what? Was there a problem with? Did you follow the campaign much at all, or?
Yeah, I think it's real. I mean, just from a statistical perspective, it's spending. The IEs and the campaigns got outspent, and if you're able to put your message out there, whatever that message is, if you're able to put it out there with more dollars behind it, it's going to reach more people. It's going to reach more people consistently. I really think starting early. Last time the campaigns probably weren't able to start as early for 2020, but now I think starting early is going to be the key. We're Jake from State Farm probably is not going to like me being their brand ambassador right now. Probably they'd Red Bull like you better than me for State Farm. Again, you start early. There's no advertising campaign that runs a couple ads and then just takes a year off. It's consistent.
Yeah.
So, my dad was in marketing. He was a marketing professor forever. His background was in, quantitative research. He looks like Larry David. I'll probably look like Larry David someday. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
But that's really my background. Let's just make it consistent. If you're not fighting every day for the cause, then taking time off, then they're going to pull ahead of you. You don't stop halfway through the NASCAR race and, take a break. You take a pit stop and then you keep going.
Okay, we're going to switch to a little bit of fun stuff as we wrap up here.
Sure.
I have a question for my kid.
Hey Joe, do you hate Republicans? And if you do, why?
I don't hate Republicans. I think I'm not a huge fan of Republican politicians. I think the voters, they support, protecting people with pre-existing conditions. I just think the politicians are serving not the entire constituency, but the big donors. Because it's the Cory Gardner example I mentioned earlier. Cory Gardner probably wanted, on an empirical level, to, support, strengthen the ACA because that would have been great for him politically. The problem is the incentives with the donors. McConnell would have cut off his money ASAP because that's not what the big donors want. Republicans don't have a grassroots donor base. It's, the Koch brother and all those folks spending money on their behalf. Giving them dollars. So I don't hate Republicans. I hate Republican politicians, but not the voters themselves.
Who has done more damage to the GOP party, Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump?
Oh man, I think Mitch McConnell laid the groundwork. Because again, in the '60s, and even under Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, they're bipartisan, agreements. And when you're Republican voters can be led down the road of supporting, what they would call socialism.
Yeah.
$1,400 checks is socialism. Reopening public schools is socialism. So if you want to reopen public schools, you're probably a socialist a little bit there.
Right.
But these voters can be led down that path. It's just that they are the Republican, ideologues like McConnell and Mike Garcia are choosing to make it a partisan fight. I think, I'll go with McConnell. I think that's a good one. I think I'll go with McConnell on that one.
My home state.
Gosh, brutal.
All right, just out of curiosity, do you have any tattoos?
I do not.
No. If you're going to get one, what would it be?
Oh man, I used to think about a cat. That'd be kind of cool. I'm a big, maybe a national park or something. That should be kind of sick. I'm a huge national park fan. That's actually the reason I got in politics.
Really?
Oh, love national.
So you put Old Faithful on your arm or something like that?
Yeah, well, I actually got a Grand Canyon sticker on the back of my phone here. I love national. I think just everybody being able to enjoy our. That's what makes America unique. Like Europe and all these other countries, they have historical sites, but they don't have the treasures that we have here environmentally. And Democrats, Republicans alike, they love to go to Yosemite, they love to go to Joshua Tree. We're really lucky here in California. I actually used to live in D.C. That's one of the reasons I wanted to move back because we're just really blessed to be out here.
Yeah.
I've actually never thought about this question before. Probably besides cat, I definitely
just
changed
cat, just a generic cat.
I definitely changed cat to a national park. Probably.
How about a cat sitting in a national park?
You know what? There probably are cats in Yosemite. Yeah, a cat in like Yosemite or something. That'd be great. I'd probably go to Zion. Zion's a great place. Me and Mitt Romney probably don't have too much in common, but we both love Zion National Park. So
right.
That's me and him right there.
What is the most famous person you've ever met?
Oh boy, I think I met Channing Tatum once. That was kind of cool for 21 Jump Street. That was fun. I met Pelosi one time. Met Kevin De Leon. I love me some KDL. Kevin De Leon's a great guy.
Yeah, he's been on the show before.
Really? That's great. Yeah, I like him. He's doing a good job. Man, I don't think too many celebrities.
How was Pelosi? Pelosi.
Oh, it was just a picture. It was funny story here. Maybe if this gets me press attention from her team, dear God, that'd be awesome. I was at the Democratic convention maybe about 4 years ago. I was still in college at the time, and I had a Frank Sinatra phone case. Big Frank Sinatra fan, and she was like, "Nice phone case," and I was like, "Thanks." So, really exciting, stimulating conversation. But I did appreciate the compliment. I take my phone exterior as a millennial. I take my phone exterior very seriously.
Yeah. Well, she's an Italian or married to an Italian, and of the age where Frank was, really huge.
I mean, he's timeless.
Oh, yeah.
It's just great. Just glad to have bonded with the speaker over that for about 5 seconds.
It's more not done. I mean, and let's get your most evil villain laugh. Can I get one like I'm coming after you, Mike?
No, but see, I was actually preparing for this. Can you like let's set the stage for this a little bit? Because if
okay.
If I ever run for something, the Republicans need some footage. Like, let's get them the soundbite. Like, I need you to kind of prompt me. Like, what would I wish I had like the cat that you evilly stroke. Like, that would be good. But I just I feel like I can't do it as well as I want to. Like, what would prompt me? Like, let's set the stage.
What would prompt you? If Mike Garcia laughed at the fact that you had a sedition PAC coming after him, what would you say?
What would I say? We're coming for you, Mike, and that's a promise. There we go.
Like that. That's good.
It wasn't like it didn't feel right.
No one ever likes their evil villain laugh.
But I just feel like there has to be something why, who's the best villain laugh for you, like in movies?
I'll get very specific. Frank Gorshin as the Riddler.
But see, imagine we put it up on a phone here, and then I would try to copy the laugh, because I feel like I could have done a better laugh that way.
Okay, well.
Not a critique. Just I just felt like I gave you my best on the podcast up until that point. I was dreading, crap, is it going to sound corny? I feel like it sounded,
No, everybody feels that what they did with the voice is corny. So
a little self-conscious about my evil laugh.
Well, okay. Aren't we all? No. Unless your name is Blofeld, you're
practice makes perfect. I'll be sure to watch Mike Garcia do it on his podcast.
Do you have a joke for us?
Oh man, I have a lot of jokes, but you can't tell them on this podcast or any podcast or verbally. Or even think about them.
Yeah, okay.
Oh man, no. Honestly, no. The one my grandma used to tell me a joke, but my grandma was a fighter, and I cannot tell that joke on any podcast ever. Man, a joke I could tell. Shoot. The only joke I have is my grandma's, and that's just not okay. Honestly, no. I have
no.
I honestly don't have a joke.
I'll give you one.
Or you can prompt me. Okay. Yeah, tell me a joke, and I'll try to think of something similar. Well, I just don't have a joke for you.
The joke I was going to say is, maybe I should have given to you in advance, is the true joke is that the traitor Mike Garcia could be referred to as a congressman. So, but that's a little.
I thought you were just going to say Mike Garcia. Punchline.
Punchline.
Yeah.
The joke of the day.
Mike Garcia. Mike Garcia. Yeah, he thinks he's. Mike Garcia. Period. I say that's the joke. He thinks. His campaign was just probably copying Top Gun. In all honesty, it's just
Well, the logo even is similar to Top Gun.
Yeah, it's just he's not. This is reality, and you're not that movie's about courage and stuff. He's just not. They stood for democracy,
He's also not a man of his word, because he did promise me on more than one occasion he would come back on the show regardless of what the election results were, and then he backed out of it completely.
Yeah.
So I don't. My beef with Mike isn't even about his politics. It's that he promised to come back on the show and then he backed out of it because he's afraid to. And I have a real problem with that because it's like I like people to take them for their word. So that's why. But so, Mike, you're still welcome to come on anytime, Mike. Anytime you want to come on, I'll set this up for you. Just name the day.
Yeah, I don't think I created the environment. I'll try to I'll try to come up with a joke for him that's not his name if he comes on.
Okay. All right. Well, Joe, I wish you luck with this PAC, Sedition Caucus PAC.
Sedition Caucus PAC.
Okay.
I'm also the Progress Action Fund, so you can.
How can people find out about it and link up or get involved with this organization?
Go to the seditioncaucus.com.
Okay.
You can also go to www.progressactionfund.com. Follow us on Twitter. Just be ready because we're coming for them. So we'll be here doing what we do.
All right. Well, Joe, I appreciate you driving up here to make the time to do the podcast. It's a beautiful day, so maybe you can enjoy some sunshine here in Santa Clarita.
Yes, please. I'm coming back. Try to come back weekly. So
okay. Well,
I'll be here doing some scouting.
Oh, sounds good. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. Much luck to you, and we hope you guys enjoyed the talk.
You've been listening to the Talk of Santa Clarita. Listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud.com, YouTube, and Stitcher. Barring a life event getting in the way, a new podcast is available every Tuesday. Questions, comments, and show ideas can be sent to thetalkofsantaclarita@gmail.com. You can also call or text us at 661-505-8672. That's 661-505-8672. Follow us on Twitter at The Talk of SC or on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Talk of Santa Clarita. You can also visit our website by going to www.thetalkofsantaclarita.com. This has been a production of Radio Free Santa Clarita Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To donate, go to radiofreesantaclarita.org/donate. Radio Free Santa Clarita, on the net and on the air, and we're very much aware.
Any questions?